So we made it halfway through chapter. What chapter was that?
12.
Was it 12?
Oh, I thought we were pretty much.
Actually,
halfway
it's
through it.
chapter 11
Well, chapter
that we did through, we got up to, we hadn't.
We didn't talk about the dragon.
No,
Yeah, we didn't. Yeah, the lizard.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about same thing. No, I didn't. Yeah. So we didn't talk about the lizard. We kind of mentioned him a little bit, but we didn't. And there's a lot of interesting things with the lizard. So if you have a physical book, I think it's page 106. That's kind of where we are. And it's interesting that he connects this idea of let's see, what was it was the lady who had lost her son, and he connects that with this idea of lust, and that's what I think is amazing about this book, is that he keeps on connecting these ideas that me and my feeble mind would never connect, and he's saying that no, there's a through line through here. And so he kind of connects them kind of around the peripheral about what it means to desire somebody, is I think what he's trying to say, and when we can let that go too far. And now he talks to this one, it's like an oily ghost, which is kind of interesting. And he's got a little red lizard on his shoulder that keeps whispering into his ears. And then an angel appears to him. And this is an angel, it's not a spirit. It's an angel, and you can tell he says it's an angel, but the angel has this kind of like heat energy coming off of him. Like it's like, I think he says it felt like the sun in the morning of a Tyranius summer day. There, I couldn't remember exactly how I was like, it was a good way that he put it. Yeah, tyrannous summer day. Like that's such a good way of putting it, where the sun is coming up in the morning and it's not oppressive yet. And so that's kind of how he describes the angel. And so the little lizard keeps indicating, it's like, oh, it's like, I'm not comfortable here. Like, let's get it. And then the angel asked the ghost, would you like me to make him quit? And if he goes, of course I would. Then I will kill him. Like that. That's let me kill him. It's like, oh no, that's not. And then he keeps asking, like, may I kill it? And it's interesting how it's like, well, that little lizard keeps on saying to the guy, what if I'm not there, it's not natural for anyone to be like that anymore. And and kind of going through all of these, like, well, this is just who I am kind of conversations. Let's see. So he says, may I kill it? And and then the part where he does kill it, we'll start reading. It's kind of right at the bottom of page 108. Don't you think so? Well, I think over what you've said very carefully, and honestly, I will. In fact, I'd let you kill it now. But the matter of fact is, I'm not feeling frightfully well today. And get like excuses. It would be most silly to do it now. I'd need to be in good health for the operation. Some other day, perhaps. There is no other day, and this is why I'm reading this. There is no other day. All days are present now. Like that's something that I kind of hit me over the head. I think the first time I read it, and it continues to be like, we so often live either in the past or in the future, and like it just in just the sheer fact of him saying, like, now everything's present now, go back, you're burning me. How can I tell you to kill it? You'd kill me if you did. It is not so. Why are you hurting me now? I never said it wouldn't hurt. I said it wouldn't kill you. And he kind of continues going, I cannot kill it. It's the bottom of the page. I cannot kill it against your will. It's impossible. May I have your permission? And then, the angel's hands are almost closed in around the lizard. And he's like, it's not natural, all these things. that's something we talked about just a little bit ago. And it's the bottom of that big paragraph. Have I your permission, said the angel to the ghost. I know it will kill me. It won't. But supposing it did, you're right. I would be better to be dead than to live with this creature. Then may I? Damn blast you. Go on. Can't you? Get it over. Do what you like, bellowed the ghost, but ended whimpering. God help me. God help me. Like that's it I don't know. That just the way he suddenly just kind of gives up.
Why does he say it's embarrassing? That one.
Let's see where
Up on the top of page of 108.
yeah.
He says, it's so damned embarrassing. What? I don't get that part.
Oh, I think that's like when like so you think about like the lust on his shoulder there is that little dragon or a little lizard like that. That's that everyone can see it, you know, and it's kind of like when your sin is kind of out in the open. Yeah, kind of out in the open, type of thing. I don't know, maybe it's like even like a Scarlet Letter kind of idea. Like that's dealing with other things, but like the intention behind it, where he's like, I wish that I could be in more control. It can be really embarrassing. I don't know. That's kind of where my mind went.
And other people are aware. To him, it's like other people can see that I've got this issue.
Yeah, and also, he's kind of in the outskirts of heaven there, and it's not really, it's kind of frowned upon, and so yeah, that's kind of that's interesting. And then, so the next moment, the ghost gave a scream of agony such as I'd never heard on earth, and the burning one closed his crimson grip around the reptile, twisted it while it bit and writhed and flung it and broken backed on the turf. Oh, that's done for me, gasped the ghost, reeling backwards. And then that lizard grows and becomes this amazing horse. What stood before me was the greatest stallion I've ever seen, silvery white, but with mane and tail of gold. Gloria, or Cheryl, you can close that door if you'd like. I doubt anyone else is going to close it. Yeah, so this huge stallion comes kind of from that lizard, and they spend a lot of time talking about like just the glory of that stallion, and it's they kind of explain it here for the next. I guess we'll let them explain it here. While I still watched, I noticed that the whole plain and the forest. This is the top of 113. While I still watched, I noticed that the whole plain and forest were shaking with sound, which in our world would be too large to hear. But there I could take it with joy. I knew it was not the solid people who were singing. It was the voice of that earth, those woods, those waters, the strange, inorganic noise, like this whole thing that all of the creation is singing, kind of idea. Like that's to kind of think about all those, and they start singing in this song. There's a lot of songs here at the end of the thing, and they all these songs kind of sound very very much like the Psalms. Yeah, come on in. Grab a chair. We just closed the door on you. Oh man.
Any excuse to be like,
So we're right at the end of chapter 11. Your page numbers will be different than everyone else's because apparently Amazon ran out of the good books, and we have those. So right at the end of chapter 11. So with the oily lizard, and so So the lizard becomes a horse, this great stallion, and then all of the creation is like singing a song. And I'm going to read a bunch from the top of page 114. This is like 5 or 6 paragraphs before the end of 11. I don't know about it all, sir, said I. Am I right in thinking the lizard really turned into a horse? Aye, but it was killed first. You not forget that part of the story. I'll try not to, sir, but does it mean that everything that is in us, that is in us can go to the mountains? Nothing, not even the best and noblest, can go on as it is now. Nothing, not even what is lowest and most bestial, will not be raised again if it submits to death. It is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body. Flesh and blood cannot come to the mountains, nor because they are too rank, but because they are too weak. What is a lizard compared with a stallion? Lust is a poor, weak, whispering thing compared to the richness and energy of desire which will arise when lust has been killed. Like, that's the way that he's like describing crucifixion and resurrection, Good Friday and Easter there, and never saying those words is like I thought was beautiful. You know, that's just everything in us has to kind of die before kind of going forward. And then he goes back to the mom, and let's see, we'll just keep reading there. But am I to tell them at home that this man's sensuality proved less of an obstacle than that poor woman's love for her son? For that was at any rate an excess of love. You tell them no such thing, he replied sternly. Excess of love, did you say? There was no excess. There was defect. She loved her son too little, too much. If she had loved him more, there'd be no difficulty. I do not know how her affair will end, but it may well be at this moment that she's demanding to have him down with her in hell. That kind is sometimes perfectly ready to plunge the soul they say they love into endless misery, if only they can still in some fashion possess it. And that's that connection to lust there. That her love is only what her son can bring her. And that's that.
It's a selfishness. It's not about the son. It's about her.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's difficult. that's a hard thing. That's a hard thing because, like, you know, if you stood up and just plainly said that in mixed company, that people would be like, "What?" You know, and like can get mad at you. And that's definitely part. I mean, did anyone have any thoughts or things from this chapter?
On this one summary I saw online, they talked about the fact that most evil is just a corruption of good, not an equal opposite. That it's like the mother's love is a good thing, but it got corrupted by her. It wasn't an evil thing, you know, in and of itself. And that
That's
you
good.
must sacrifice their love for earthly things.
Yeah, that's good. Like that whole idea of it being something good, but is corrupted.
Yeah.
Like that's. I think that's a good. It's a good example. It's a good example. Because I think that happens a lot, and we can see that happen. That there are a lot of good.
Mom.
Yeah. Like, and I just think we see that in a bunch of situations where it's like, no, this is good, but it's just like it's gone all wrong, and I think that's actually a good segue into talking about this next guy, which is the dwarf with the actor, you know, on the chain. That's chapter 12. Like the dwarf with the actor on the chain. And it's interesting that the dwarf keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller as we go, and he keeps wanting the actor to answer for him. And they ends up kind of saying the same thing at the end, that it's like this was a good thing, but not totally. I think it may be chapter 13. Chapter 12 is about the wife. coming in. We'll hit her first. So the whole creation is singing and all that stuff, and then the end of the first paragraph. A few moments later, I realized my mistake. Some kind of procession was approaching us, and a light came from the persons who composed it. There are bright spirits and all these people coming forward, and then he's like, "Who is this?" And they're this unbelievable person, and like. Is it like, and maybe he's going to say like Jesus or something like that. Is it, and it's the bottom of page 118. Like I whispered to my guide, "Not at all," said he. "It's someone that you will have never heard of. Her name on earth was Sarah Smith," which is like the most boring name. Like that. It's just like an everyday name.
Joe Blow.
Yeah. Joe Blow, John Doe, like that. Just
My daughter's Louise Smith.
Yeah. Exactly. Like that's it's just a name. It's just, and I think that's intentional. It's just, we all probably know a Sarah Smith in our life at some point. Like that's, and and then I don't know what it means with it. She lived at Gonders Green, but that's probably a crowded, normal, nothing special town type of thing, like that's, and he's like, "She seems to be, well, someone of particular importance." "Yeah, she's one of the great ones. You have never heard that fame in this country and fame on earth are quite different things." That always reminds me of, I can't remember what story was. It maybe The Shack. The Shack may be a good one to do next summer. The Shack, I can't remember, but it was basically the same idea. It's like, no, that's not what it was. It was a comic strip that someone goes like, "Jesus, what's your favorite music?" And it's like, "Oh, it's this person." It's a name much like this. They probably got it from that. "What's your favorite Christian music?" And they're like, "Oh, well, I've never heard of her." And Jesus responds back and goes, "Oh, she's very famous from where I come from," type of thing. And that's, and like, it's just, I love stuff like that. It's just like this normal, everyday, mundane. And it's just, and it talks about why that she's so famous there. That, he says, like, there's so many people all around her. She must have had a very large family. Every young man or boy that met her became her son, even if it was only the boy that brought the meat to her back door. Every girl that met her was her daughter. Isn't that a bit hard on their own parents? No. There are those that steal other people's children's, but her motherhood was of a different kind. Those on whom it fell went back to their natural parents, loving them more. Few men looked on her without becoming, in certain fashion, her lovers, but it was the kind of love that made them not less true, but more true to their own wives. And then all the cats and dogs, like, he's doing this whole beautiful, that she was just caring, just kind and caring to the whole, to the whole creation there.
Regardless of who or what.
Yeah. And let's see, it says, every beast and bird that came near her had its place in her love. In her they became themselves. And now the abundance of life she has in Christ from the Father flows over into them. Yeah, I think that's, and it's just, it's a beautiful, like, place in it. And that's when we start talking about the dwarf. And this is what I think is interesting. So she is presented in such beauty and fashion. All these people were just made better around her. And yet her own husband is struggling.
Yeah.
Like that's, and I think there's a little bit of brilliance associated with that. That Lewis never has to say it in the book, but you could tell that her life wasn't just like peachy keen and roses. Like that there was some struggle in there too.
But despite that, she always was kind to other people, even if she
Oh, yeah.
was suffering.
Yeah. So that's, that's yeah, that's great. That's great. Let's see, and we meet the dwarfish figure who had the actor who's like big into doing dramatic roles or something like that is how it's described. And
Tragedian or
yeah,
something.
tragedian like that. That's I don't know. That's probably a big word across the pond that just doesn't get used. Or I'm not high class enough to use a word like that in
You know,
everyday speak.
You like the dramatic tragedy.
Yeah. That very well could be. Let's see. It's interesting that so you get this kind of tall actor who's standing up, speaking well, and she keeps going right down to the dwarf, which is her husband, and it seems like the dwarf thing, because he keeps getting smaller in the story, that it's almost like he has no means to stand up for himself. So he has to put on this show in order to stand up for himself. And so kind of relies on these outside
There
character.
was some point where he either laughed or cried or something, and a couple times where he became more solid,
Yeah.
but then, started shrinking again.
Because and he started coming down. And so the bottom of 121, it says, Frank, she said, before anything else, forgive me for all that I've ever did wrong, for all I did not do right. Since the first day we met, I asked for your pardon. Which again is that interesting juxtaposition of what we just saw. And you see, and I think Lewis is creating this vision of what righteousness is in that kingdom, that it's this kind of this outpouring of forgiveness and humility and and going in there, not having to be right, that type of thing.
And the meaning of grace.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Giving-
forgot, I looked it up. An actor who specializes in tragic roles.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah,
There we
I
go.
did.
Actors specialize in tragic roles.
He is portrayed almost as perfection.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And then for her to say, forgive me,
yeah,
it's very heavy.
it is. It is like, and it's this juxtaposition of what you're expecting, and I think that's there to give us the view of part of that perfection is that asking for forgiveness,
it also.
and of humbling ourselves.
They also noted on this thing is that unlike the previous women we've seen, she's not complaining or selfish.
Oh yeah, she's yeah.
Nor was she in her earthly life.
Yeah. Well, I don't think so, because they had all the people around her. But there is a problem with her. She's definitely at least gotten past it now. That she's part of the solid people and all these things. Let's see here. So the dwarf keeps jerking the chain of the tragic actor. Let's see here. We've kind of been talking about all this. And so she ends up saying, it's the bottom of 122. I don't know. Her beauty brightened so that I could hardly see anything else, and under the sweet compulsion, the dwarf really looked at her for the first time. For a second, I thought he was growing more like a man. That's what you just said, Carol. He opened his mouth. He himself was going to speak this time, and oh, the disappointment when the words came. You missed me? Type of thing. He croaked in a small, bleeding voice. And yet, even then, she was not taken aback. Still, the love and curiosity flowed from her. I love the way he puts that. Even though she was taken back, still the love and the curiosity.
Mine says courtesy.
Courtesy. Oh my gosh, I can't read. It's still great. So I don't know how to read. Still the love and courtesy flowed from her. Just that idea of just desiring, him. Even though he's kind of showing his true self and all that. So like that's kind of what I meant by, yeah. Oh well. They let's see here. Doo-doo-doo.
Well, maybe what he said was expected.
Mm,
Maybe he was that always.
yeah,
So she was ready for
she
that.
she knows who he is.
Mhm.
He's like, oh, you really missed me,
Yeah.
and that makes sense for his character.
Right.
That's what he's concerned about.
Yeah.
You know, that's why he puts on the actor image. Let's see. Let's see. 124. Let's see. There's the beginning of a paragraph. I have no idea where it is though. Of course, it would be rather fine and magnanimous not to press the point, they said to one another. But can we be sure she'd notice? We've done this sort of thing before. There was the time we let her have the last stamp in the house to write to her mother and said nothing, although she had known we wanted to write the letter ourselves. We thought she'd remember and see how unselfish we'd been in acting, but she never did. And there was the time, lots of times. So the dwarf gave the shake of the chain. Like that whole idea. There are often times when we're upset at people that they have no idea that we're upset. You know? There's a lot of times it's like, why doesn't that person just do this? And we just get mad about that, and we're the only one concerned about it.
But
Yeah.
sometimes we're in a judging mode
Yeah,
a lot then when we have to remind ourselves not to be.
yeah. Like that part of premarital counseling I do with people is never when the other person hurts your feelings or something like that, never assume they did it on purpose. You know, like that's and because if you assume that they did it on purpose, that's like a cancer that can grow inside you, and that's what he's assuming. It's like she knew we wanted to write a letter. She didn't know.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
When they talked about this,
Yeah.
for the first time, when I went to a funeral 2-3 weeks ago, I heard the version of Amazing Grace that talked about the chain.
Oh, yeah.
And somehow the chain through this and what happened with the dwarf and the chain made me think of that.
Oh, okay.
I started reading into it.
No, that's interesting. So like
And there is
I can't remember
grace
that
built
line.
into this, so.
yeah, I have a recollection of that, but I can't.
Yeah, I can't recall the,
Yeah.
It's a beautiful song, the way that chorus is.
Yeah.
I have to pull it up later.
That was the first time I heard it, it brought me to tears.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that seems to be kind of almost like there's this real back and forth with the actor and the dwarf and Sarah. And it says, let's see, it's like at the top of 125, it says, there was for him a sweetness in it. For a second, he had almost let the chain go. Then, as if it were his lifeline, he clutched it all the more. Like just that frustrated. It's like, what are you doing, man? Come on. I want you to be redeemed. Look here, said the actor. Well, we've got to face this. He was using his manly bullying tone this time, the one for bringing women to their senses. I like that. I like that. That made me laugh. I was like, that's such a like a.
I went like, what?
That's such an open thing to say, especially back in the 40s. Yeah, I like that. That's such a aware thing to say, and so again, she's not belittling him at all, but he keeps trying to, like, no, this is how it is. You know, you hurt us and all that.
She's perfect for him.
Yeah, she's perfect for him.
Yeah.
Well, that's like all these people that are coming to these folks, like they're all there like to help them come through all this, you know. Let's see. So it's kind of the bottom of 125. I'll begin at top of a paragraph. Only in a poor sort of way, she answered. I have asked you to forgive me. There was a little real love in it. There was a little real love in it. But what we called down there was mostly the craving to be loved. In the main, I loved you for my own sake because I needed you. And now, said the actor with a hackneyed, I don't even know what that means, gesture of despair, I can guess. Now you need me no more? But of course not, said the lady, and her smile made me wonder how both the phantoms could refrain from crying out in joy. Well, beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful words there. Yeah. Well, what needs could I have, she said. Now that I have all, I am full now, not empty. I am in love himself, not lonely, strong, not weak. You shall be the same. Come and see. We shall have no need for one another. We can begin to love truly.
When she said, I am in love himself,
Mhm.
I saw her as God's child loving.
Mhm.
Exactly,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
It hit me good. Everything is
Yeah. Yeah.
And she doesn't need his love.
Yeah.
Or his.
She doesn't have to have it. She
Yeah,
realized
She's
that-
broken that chain.
Yeah, she's realized that she has that full acceptance and love and everything going. So everything she can give, she can just give now.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
she.
it's not even that he's a rotten person, it's
Yeah.
just, it could have been a great husband, but it still changes,
Yeah,
correct? I mean, to me that.
yeah. I mean, it could, and that's
and she fully realizes her blessing.
yeah, yeah. And I think as we see the way this book ends here in a little bit, what this book is really like encouraging us to do is how we live here. Like that. That's where like are we lusting after the relationships in our lives, where it's like I've got to get something from you type of thing, and rather than realizing like that's like we're fine, we're fine. Like that's Chris Escher way to put it. It's like when you realize you're okay, like then you can really like you can love people around you. That's the hardest thing for us all to get over is realizing that we're okay, that we'll be fine no matter what may befall us. We'll be okay.
Yeah.
Like that. That's. And I personally, Chris Escher thinks that that's the root of a lot of anger and things like that. Is when you think that the world needs to be in your control, that you're not okay, and so you just lash out in anger at other people. That's Chris Escher. That's not C.S. Lewis. But that's kind of what I think. Let's see. So we got one last big paragraph here, in this chapter, because I don't know how long the creature intended to go on repeating the phrase for the lady put an end to that. Frank, Frank, she cried in a voice that made the whole wood ring. Look at me.
I
Look.
put it in her phone though.
Oh my goodness.
You're playing.
I thought I did.
I like your ringtone.
Sorry about that. Oh, wait, it's got a ring in the mouth.
So Frank, look at me. What are you doing with that great ugly doll? Let go of the chain. Send it away. It is you I want. Don't you see what nonsense it's talking? Merriment danced in her eyes. She was sharing a joke with the dwarf right over the head of the actor. Something not unlike a smile struggled to appear on the dwarf's face, for he was looking at her now. Her laughter was past his first defenses. He was struggling hard to keep it out, but already with imperfect success. Against his will, he was even growing a little bigger. "Oh, you great goose," she said. "What is the good of talking like that here? You know as well as I do that you did see me laying dead years and years ago. Not at your feet, of course, but on the bed in a nursing home. A very good nursing home it was, too. Matron, gosh, I can't read. Matron would never have dreamed of leaving bodies lying about the floor. It's ridiculous for that doll to try to be impressive about death here. It just won't work." I don't know, like that's, I don't know, this as we go into the next chapter, it kind of continues the story here. But does that ring anybody a certain way?
Isn't that related to something you said Sunday in the third message that God gave to Peter?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, when he asked, "Do you love me?"
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And Peter replied, "I can't repair
Yeah,
that."
yeah.
You know.
Well, it's like, yeah, so it's Jesus asking him, I mean, do you love me unconditionally? Like there's 3 loves in Greek. And Peter keeps responding, "Yeah, I love you like a brother."
Yeah.
And then the last time Jesus goes, "Well, do you love me like a brother?" And so like that, yeah, like that. That's
But then Jesus said, "You will be led in your ages."
yeah, like
Yes.
he basically says, "You're going to follow me through death."
Uh-huh.
Like that's like this is how it says he spoke to him in a death like his. Yeah, I didn't really talk about that much, but like that's. But yeah, it was that Peter was going to lead in the death with him there. But it's sweet how she acknowledged that he took care of her. You know, when she, even at the end of her life, you know, it was a nice nursing home. You know, it was a good one. He didn't put me in the dump or anything.
I took that a different way.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I took it, this is her love again. It may have been a dump.
No, it may have been a dump.
It may have been a dump, but she was saying, no, you know, you took, you did everything you could for me.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it's like, don't worry about it. It was a good nursing home.
Mm-hmm.
It was fine.
It almost as she's relaying his
His guilt about how he did all that.
Yeah, you know, I was dead. You did see me lying dead years and years ago.
Yeah.
Not at your feet, but on a bed in a nursing home. And then she says, the matron would never have dreamed of leaving bodies lying about the floor. That to me, that, you know.
It could have been
how
bad.
she died, you know.
Yeah,
did he
was she on
come
the
in and
floor?
find her on the floor,
Yeah.
which would mean the service at the nursing home was not that great.
Mm.
But she's telling him, it's fine.
Yeah.
The nursing home is great. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good.
It actually made me think of vows.
Vows.
Yes, that people exchange when they marry each
Yeah.
other. And nowhere in the vows does it say, "I'll be nice to you."
Yeah.
Or nowhere in the vow. Well, it made me think, you know, he was taking care of her.
Yeah.
And that's built into that, but not the, you know, the attitude part.
Yeah.
It just made me think of that.
Yeah. 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 So the beginning of 13 is just kind of a continuation of the story. And right at the top of chapter 13, "I do not know that I ever saw anything more terrible than the struggle of that dwarf ghost against joy. For he had almost been overcome. Somewhere in incalculable ages ago, there must have been gleams of humor and reason in him. And for one moment, she looked at him in her love and mirth and saw the absurdity of the actor. For one moment, he did not at all misunderstand her laughter. He too must once have known that no people find each other more absurd than lovers. But the light that reached him against his will. This was not the meeting he had pictured. He would not accept it. Once more he clutched at his death line, and once again the actor spoke, and it immediately goes, "You laugh at my face." You know, like that's like immediately it goes to like, well, you're just accusing. Like that's how I heard that, and it's a beautiful paragraph where he's like, he knows, but he still, for whatever reason, needs that line of defense, you know, and then just like yells it out, like, "No, you're laughing at me now," and that's, and again, I go back to it that the C.S. Lewis's Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe series, like the Narnia series, the one I think it's The Magician's Nephew, which is I think one of the last ones he wrote. It's actually the first one in the book. I think it's that one.
Yeah.
They go back to the pre-created Narnia, and this is my favorite thing about C.S. Lewis that he does is that the pre-fallen Narnia, like the created world, it's all fresh, and there's one of the animals that's created and is talking and all of that falls into a mud hole, and all the other ones laugh, and they're not laughing at that animal, they're laughing at just the absurdity of this. They're just having what is described here as the struggle of the dwarf ghost against joy, you know, and just everyone there is just having joy.
Mhm.
And just the way that he's able to say, I will never forget that part. And it's one of those. I think it's The Magician's Nephew, but it just kind of sticks with me. And then that reminds me of this scene where he has that choice to go with, I can see the absurdity of it all, because she's already said stuff like that.
He's so determined to make her feel miserable.
Yeah.
Make himself feel better, I guess.
Yeah.
For some reason. For not missing him enough.
Yeah. And then, let's see. From this time on, the dwarf never spoke again, but still the lady addressed it. Dear, no one sends you back. Here is all joy. Everything bids you to stay. But the dwarf was growing smaller even while she spoke. And yes, said the actor, and on terms you might offer to a dog. I happen to have some self-respect left, and I see that my going will make no difference to you. It is nothing to you that I go back to the cold and gloom, the lonely, lonely streets. You know, and then she's like fights for him a little bit there, and he caught her words, and he goes, you can't bear it, as he shouted with miserable triumph. Like what a way, miserable triumph. Like that's
The dichotomy.
and there's a couple, like at the beginning of the book, there was that one guy who that the murderer was talking to, and that he finally got energy when he realized that he could maybe get an upper hand in an argument or something like that.
Yeah.
And just that whole idea of like just getting energy from belittling somebody is really kind of gross in this book.
Mhm.
Yeah. Let's see. And continuing on, let's see. It's kind of the middle of the page of 131. It's the beginning of a small paragraph. The dwarf was now so small that I could not distinguish him from the chain to which he was clinging. And now, for the first time, I could not be certain whether the lady was addressing him or the actor. Quick, she said, there is still time. Stop it at once. Stop what? Using pity. And this made me stop reading the other day. Using pity. Using other people's pity in the wrong way. We have all done it a bit on earth, you know. Pity was meant to be a spur that drives joy to help misery, but it can be used the wrong way around. It be used for a kind of blackmailing. Those who choose misery can hold joy up by ransom. By pity, you see, I know now. Even as a child, you did it. Instead of saying you were sorry, you went and sulked in the attic. because you knew that sooner or later, one of your sisters would say, I can't bear to think of him sitting up there alone crying. You used their pity to blackmail them, and they gave in the end. And afterwards, when we were married, oh, it doesn't matter if only you will stop it. Like that, like, ooh, like the power that we use in pity. Like that's to try to get an upper hand. And it's like, I read that and I was like, ooh, how many times? I like that. How many times?
Oops.
Yeah, like that. Like
I
that.
like the rest of the book.
Yeah. That's,
A little here, a little there.
yeah, a little
Looks
bit.
comes too close.
Yeah. It's like, ooh, how many times? You know, you're like that's when you can't win the argument, so you just storm off
Mm.
in an attempt to win, you know? Like that's, or like, why didn't you do this for me? And you're trying to like,
I've seen my granddaughters do that.
Yeah.
Make the other party feel as guilty as
Uh-huh.
possible.
Yeah, make everyone
It's
feel
not really my fault.
like that's, and like, and I think, you know, if we allow that to, it's manipulation. And like, you know, you think about all the times that we try to use manipulation to get our way in things, and just how disgusting it is, even though, you know, even we still do it like that. That's yeah, like that. That's and that one made me start. So I don't have much underlined for kind of not the rest of this, but up into the song, because it just kind of continues on.
Talked about passion of pity.
Yeah, the passion of pity.
It will die and only one can enter hell.
Mm,
That's in here.
yeah,
That's what I wrote.
yeah. Only one could die. Oh yeah, like that's. Oh yeah, well that's coming up, right? When it starts talking about Christ. Yeah, that's coming up. So it kind of goes into like he kind of disappears, like some of the others were, and she continues on, which is I thought it was interesting that he did that. He didn't just move on from that picture, and they start singing the song again, and this next song, you know, sounds like a psalm, but there's grief and struggle in the psalm. You know, it's in the middle of this, and so we get C.S. Lewis back again after that song, and yet, said I to my teacher, when all the shapes in the singing had passed from some distance away from the forest, even now I'm not quite sure. Is it really tolerable that she should be untouched by his misery, even if it's self-made misery? And then we start talking about, we're about to find out what hell is, what the gray town is. Would you rather he still had the power of tormenting her? He did it in many a day, in many a year in their earthly life. Well, no. Well, then what then? I hardly know, sir, what some people on earth is that final loss of one's soul gives the lie to all the joy, those who are saved. You know, you see, it does not. I feel in a way that it ought to. That sounds very merciful, but see what lurks behind it. What? And then, this is important here. The demand of the loveless and the self-imprisoned that they should be allowed to blackmail the universe, that till they consent to be happy on their own terms, no one else shall chase joy, that there should be final power, that hell should be able to veto heaven. And that right there,
Biggie.
that is a biggie. That is a biggie. Because I think there's two things that's really telling me in my life, that sometimes I give I continue to give people more power than they should have, you know, in my own existence. You know, like that's where they're trying to disrupt the joy, disrupt like that's, and rather than having, and I think that's like that classic kind of Christian book with the boundaries. That's really what that book's about having boundaries with people that just want to bring you down.
One of the things on here too is that spirits like Sarah try to help the damned, but they refuse to move out of love.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's a good way of putting it. Let's see here. Son, it must be one way or the other. Either the day must come when joy prevails and all makers of misery are no longer able to infect it, or else forever and ever the makers of misery can destroy in others the happiness they reject for themselves. Like, yeah, like that's unreal. That's just, and as soon as you hear it, it's like, oh yeah, at least for me, that's the way how it is. And that's because that's, you know, we'll talk about church world. It's so easy for someone or a group of people. That's kind of what this Red Letter Challenge is about. It's kind of about recognizing this in ourselves. How we've been the arbiters of misery in a lot of people's lives rather than the arbiters of a heavenly joy. You know, that's really kind of what it's about, saying that, looking at the words of Jesus, you know, the red letters, all that stuff, and seeing how Jesus is bringing joy into the creation, you know, that goodness, and you know, are we bringing that joy? I'm kind of mixing the language between the two, but I don't know. I may be writing a sermon in front of you too. We'll see. But yeah, like that amazed me. So kind of at the bottom of that paragraph, but dare one say it's horrible to say that pity must ever die? You must, and this is what we're getting into your stuff, Cheryl. You must distinguish the action of pity. The action of pity will live forever, but the passion of the pity will not. The passion of the pity we merely suffer, the ache that draws men to concede what should not be conceded, and to flatter when they shouldn't speak truth. The pity that has cheated many a woman out of her virginity and many a statement out of his honesty, that will die. It was used as a weapon by bad men against good ones. Their weapon will be broken. And that's like a justice thing right there. And it kind of reminds me of that guy at the beginning with the murderer, kind of going full circle, where all he wanted was, I want my rights. That's all I want. And kind of looking back at him now, like that's almost that signal of pity. Like, just give me what I'm due, man.
I did everything right.
I did everything right. And that's, and I know of myself in dealing with organizations and all that stuff, you can listen to people like that, and they can get some power that way. But they don't have to get power that way. You know? So that's a hard thing. You know, it's not clear cut. It's not clear cut, but we gotta watch out for it. And that's and the way that I kind of see it is like people that just complain and are always like defeatist. Like they're always doing this to us, you know, like that's
Well, the grumbler, the lady that was.
Yeah, the grumbler. Like that's and really not letting them get a hold of you, or you know, and trying to like watch over the ones that you love.
They're not even looking for joy.
They're not even looking for joy. They're looking for power.
Mhm.
Like that's something I've been saying a lot lately. Is and it's just something I kind of stumbled upon, but like HOAs and churches are a lot in common, and the reason why I say that is we often have leadership deficits in both of them, and we're so interested in filling a position of leadership that we don't really think about the right person being in there, and that if
You just take a body.
you just take a body.
Mhm.
And what really made me start thinking about that is the Sunrise stuff. You know, like how many in that condo over the years was that just a body being filled? Because it's a hard position, you know, it's like having to deal with people and
It's a very thankless position.
yeah, and thankless and
And you're talking volunteers, you
Mhm.
know, it's hard.
yeah, it is.
And you're fighting against the one great God, money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what that's what makes it so hard. And I keep thinking that a lot of times people come up and they play the song of pity as they accumulate more and more power. And for me, it really reminds me, it's like, don't play that game because there's power in it. You can manipulate people, you know, like you can manipulate people and make them feel like they're getting something when all they're getting is a more powerful you.
You ever wonder why gravity makes things fall down? We never fall up.
I don't know. I don't know. Well, depends on how. I don't know. Like, I can poke a hole in that if you want. Like that. Like that's.
But yeah, we have to watch it that we don't use pity ourselves.
Yeah.
But we also have to watch what you were saying, where you were giving people, feel like you've given people too much control sometimes.
Yeah.
That we have to watch that we don't allow somebody else to drag us down, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
He was trying to drag her down.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that's, I think, and those are two difficult things because often we can act in love. I've had tons of managers in my life and all that stuff. It's like, do you love that person that's trying to do that to you, or do you just love being loved by them? And so you're being complicit to their badness because you want to be accepted. And that's
No, peer pressure.
like that's, and it's like why am I doing what I'm doing type of thing. So he starts talking about the bus, to right from that pity to talking about the bus. And I'll just read that paragraph right after that pity one, at the bottom of 136, beginning of a paragraph. It's a weapon on the other side. It leaps quicker than light from the highest place to the lowest to bring healing and joy, whatever the cost to itself. It changes darkness into light and evil to good, but it will not, at the cunning tears of hell, impose on good the tyranny of evil. Every disease that submits to a cure shall be cured, but we will not call blue yellow to please those who insist on still having jaundice, nor make a midden of the world's garden for the sake of some who cannot abide the smell of roses. You say it will go down to the lowest, sir, but she didn't go down to him in hell. She didn't even see him off by the bus. And he's like, where do you think they went? Why where we all came from by the bus, the big gulf beyond the edge of the cliff over there. You can't see it from here, but you must know the place that I mean. My teacher gave me a curious smile. He said, look. And with the word, he went down on his hands and knees, and I did the same. How it hurt my knees. and precisely saw that he had plucked a blade of grass. Using its thin end as a pointer, he made me see, after I looked very closely, a crack in the soil so small that I could not have identified it without this aid. I cannot be certain, he said, that this is the crack that you came up from. But through a crack no bigger than that, you certainly came.
You think of the Holy Spirit then?
Oh yeah, and how? What? Like?
Because it can be really small and then all of a sudden,
Oh, okay. Yeah. Like that's yeah. But I grasped with a feeling of bewilderment, not unlike terror. I saw an infinite abyss, the cliffs towering up and up, and in this country on top of the cliffs. But the voyage was not a mere locomotion. That bus and all you inside were increasing in size. Do you mean then that hell and all of that infinite empty town is down in some little crack like this? Yeah. All hell is smaller than one pebble of your earthly world, but it is smaller than one atom of this world, the real world. Look at that butterfly over there. If it swallowed all hell, hell would not be big enough to do it any harm or to have any taste.
Yeah, that was wild when I came to that. That was,
Like it's giving you a picture of
Yeah.
something so much bigger. And that's why I read a certain review on Amazon of this book, and the guy was just trying to use the language here to make hell big enough that it would affect us. And like he was protecting hell, as I would do it. And this was something that was driven away from me like a while now ago. And I was just like, it's got no quarter here. You know? It's a small thing to use this language. Like that's like, why protect it? Why protect it? Are you protecting hell to use pity to gain power over people?
Mm. Okay.
Does that make sense what I
Yeah.
said?
That's what I mean.
Yeah, are we protecting it so that we can tell people how to live so that people like me at least can have more power? You know? And that's how this affects me. I don't know how it affects you guys. I'm only me. But that's what makes me. That's what I take away from this book. Like that, it's and that. Am I using the small things of hell in order to make myself feel bigger, but I'm actually growing smaller? And it's a complicated thing. It's not easy.
Okay, like the preachers that used to preach hell and
Yeah,
fire and brimstone.
the fire and brimstone stuff.
Be very dramatic.
Mm-hmm. Like, and I kind of wonder if I got it all from this book, but something I try to say a lot is, I think a lot of people. I'll change my terminology. A lot of people have hell in their own lives. You know, they go through their lives and there's something that they're dealing with, and it's like, why would I bring that up to the forefront on Sunday? You know, when I could give them something that could take the burden off. You know, I'm not the best at it, but like that's kind of, and it's interesting. I was talking to someone. I won't say any names, but and she goes for the 4th of July sermon. She goes, we watched 3 sermons that day because we hung out with 3 sets of family or something like that, and she goes. And she goes, I really appreciate that you actually said the gospel. That somebody just gave a history lesson about the country. They didn't even talk about Christian things. They just talked about the country. And then this other one, they were doing something else, but it was still just all like law. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that I was doing. That was the week that we did Samson. And we were trying to figure out how to do gospel in Samson anyway. like that week, because that was kind of a hard one. And so but like I was kind of taken aback by that. Like when they said that. So let's see here. But yeah, I love that butterfly.
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't even affect a butterfly if it swallowed all of hell. Like I'd love it. And yet all loneliness, angers, hatreds, envies, itchings that it contains have rolled into one single experience and put into a scale against the least moment of joy that is felt by the least in heaven would have no weight that it couldn't be registered at all. Bad cannot succeed even in being bad, as truly as good is good. If all hell's miseries together entered the consciousness of yon wee yellow bird on the bow there, they would be swallowed up without a trace, as if one drop of ink had been dropped into the great ocean to which your terrestrial Pacific itself is only a molecule. And skipping out just a little bit, nothing like small enough. For a damned soul is nearly nothing. It is shrunk, shut up in itself. Good beats upon the damned incessantly as sound waves beat on the ears of the deaf, but they cannot receive it. Their fists are clenched, their teeth are clenched, their eyes fast shut. First they will not, in the end they cannot open their hands for a gift, or their mouth for food, or eyes to see. Then no one can ever reach him. Only the greatest of all can make himself small enough, and this is Cheryl, this is what you were talking about. Only the greatest of all can make himself small enough to enter hell. For the higher a thing is, the lower it can descend. A man can sympathize with a horse, but a horse cannot sympathize with a rat. Only one has to descend into hell. And will he ever do so again? It was not once that long ago that he did it. Time does not work the way that you have often felt on earth. All moments that have been or shall be were all present in the moment of his descending. And there is no spirit in prison to whom he did not preach. And some hear him? Yeah. In your own words, sir, said I, you were a universalist. You talked as if all men would be saved. And St. Paul, too. You can know nothing of the end of things and nothing expressible in those terms. It may be, as the Lord said to Lady Julian, it will all be well, and all will be well, and all manner of things will be well, but it's ill talking of such questions. And then it kind of keeps on going. It kind of gets weird. Did anyone, he goes, no, because all answers deceive.
Mm-hmm.
What did you guys take from this whole thing here at the end? It gets confusing, and all of a sudden he's trying to wrap it up, you can tell, and kind of talk about what's going on. And there's like, is this the chapter where there's the chessboard, or is that the next one? Yeah, it's the next one. And it kind of goes into trying to explain how things work with this chessboard and things moving around and all of that. And it kind of seems like he kind of comes away, at least to me, and you guys can disagree with this, but that there is this sense of like, yeah, I can go do my own thing, but there's still some people moving things around. Like I can become small. I can become small like hell, or I can kind of follow the way, become who I've been created to be. And then basically C.S. Lewis wakes up from a dream.
Well, one of the things, too, is I don't know if I read it here or whether it was in their analysis, but that we live in time, but God lives in past, present, and future. And it's like the chessboard, he controls and has the whole chessboard. You move around in it, you have the free will, but we can't comprehend the overall thing.
And I like how he's using time here, that God is kind of that, when he describes Jesus going, like you think of Apostles' Creed, like descending into hell, like the way it's like a singularity moment. And that's, I'm not going to get too deep on this, but all this, and he may be talking about, because Einstein would have done his theory of relativity right before this. But the big thing about relativity is we find that time is just a construct of speed. So, and I'm wondering if he kind of read some of that and was kind of like, oh, this is interesting. Like the idea that God is encompassing them there. Because you guys, the satellites that go above us, that are circling around the earth and all of that, they're going faster than we are. And so their time moves slower for them than they do for us. And so much so that they have to there's a calculation for those communication satellites on them to correct for it.
Right.
It's not huge. It's just a fraction of a second difference than ours. But that's something that we know that. We have to, our physicists have to calculate that in. And if you want a great explainer of this, watch the movie Interstellar. Beautiful explanation of it.
Oh, yeah.
But the way he talks about it, it's like, oh yeah, like, because we think like, oh, the infinite march of time, which is true, but time is relative to how fast you're going. And to see that God kind of being out of it in that singular point of what maybe I would call kind of love and joy of a heavenly being coming and preaching the gospel to all is kind of what I see happening there at the end. So I don't know. Well, what do you guys think? I'm going to stop talking.
Well, God always, in some parts of the Bible, says 1,000 years is like one day.
Yeah.
Several times you see that.
And he's probably quoting some of that too.
So
Yeah.
his time is not our time.
Yeah. So what'd you guys, I know we're over it, but we're finishing up the book. What'd you guys think of the book? What was the biggest thing you took from it? Like what?
Too much of me.
Too much of you?
The same thing. I saw a lot of those characters.
This was like, whoa.
Yeah, like you're treading a little close here. You're treading a little close.
It makes you rethink your choices.
Okay, yeah, that's
And it
good.
also made me see people I know in there.
Yeah,
Me too.
yeah,
That you,
And about letting go.
yeah. Like that's letting go and just kind of. I know kind of where I am right now, and I may change things, but like just that idea of like you'll be okay. Like that's no matter what happens, no matter what may befall you, nothing can separate you from the love of God. And I think that if that idea can be kind of the core of the faith, like that's kind of in us, I think that's kind of a solid idea.
pour all that into everything.
Yeah, and that you can be solid from that. Whereas without that, you're just empty and just trying to just fill up an empty jar that's too small or whatever, like that's however you want to describe it. But I don't know. Yeah, I'm really glad you guys went through the book with me, especially the last couple weeks, right? Yeah, it's a good book. I enjoy it. It's also really good. Like I'm going through it with this young guy and Cassie on Monday right now, and this one guy, he's really struggling with a lot of the faith stuff, and the book is allowing him to speak his mind because it's all fake. It's all fiction. It's allowing himself to say things that he probably wouldn't normally say, and I think that's powerful. I think that's powerful, being able to do that. So
I think this was actually pretty good too. It says, while books can be valuable Christian teaching tools, the best they can do is point to something beyond themselves.
yeah, that's good. That's good. So it's a good deal. Well, I appreciate everyone. We'll say a prayer. Jesus, we thank you for today. We thank you that you are kind of that singular moment in all history, and that you constantly are bringing us to yourself. Lord, let us put aside our our pity and our selfish desires, that we may die with you to rise again. And Lord, help our lives to be pointing to something that is beyond ourselves, of you, the Creator. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.